In this video, I'm going to show you how I use Obsidian to take notes about books that I'm reading. And in particular, I'm going to show you how I use transclusion, which is one of Obsidian's many amazing features that lets you take powerful hypertext notes. So what is transclusion? Transclusion is a concept from hypertext, and it basically means the ability to include the contents of one document or one note within the body of another document or another note by merely making a reference, so that you can think of it as like creating a link. You specify a link from one document to another, but rather than pointing to it with a hyperlink as you would have on the web, the content of the second document is rendered in the body of the document that you're currently working with. So it becomes kind of like part of that document, at least when it's rendered. And I use this in Obsidian to do things like capture quotes that I read in books that I might want to reference later. So when I'm taking notes on a book, I usually have one note where I'm taking, capturing everything that stands out to me when I'm reading the book. But there are some passages that I know I might want to refer to later from other notes in my system. And what I do is I break them out of the main document where I'm currently doing the work, and then I transclude them back into the document so that I get the benefits of having the quote be on a separate note, but also be part of the main body of notes that I'm taking about the book. So that sounds a little theoretical. It'll become clearer when I show it in practice. So let me switch over now to Obsidian. So what you're looking at here are my notes about a book. This is a book I'm currently reading. It's called The Extended Mind by Annie Murphy Paul. And the subtitle of the book is The Power of Thinking Outside the Brain. And it's a great book about how we think. We don't think just here in our heads. We think using our entire bodies and our environments. And that's what this book is about. And I'm reading it and enjoying it, and I'm capturing notes as I go along in Obsidian. And that's what you're looking at here. These are my notes for this book. I've been writing things down as I go, and you'll notice that I've started with writing down the table of contents. The book is divided into 3 parts. I take some notes from the book jacket. These are headings in Obsidian, so I can collapse and expand them, which is super helpful, right? Because I can get an overview of the whole book, or rather of my notes about the book, right? Yeah, this is how I take notes in this thing. You might notice that I'm currently in what Obsidian calls preview mode, so this is not editable. It's kind of rendering my notes rather than having them be in editing mode. But I can obviously easily switch by clicking on the edit icon here. So I can switch between the 2 modes, right? And once I'm in edit mode, I can make changes. I don't want to keep that. But let me show you how I actually do this. So I'm going to scroll down all the way to the bottom. I just finished reading chapter 8, so I'm going to take notes about chapter 8. And I'm now in editing mode, as you might notice, because this button has turned into the preview button, and also you can see the cursor blinking there. So you might have noticed when I showed the book that I have a lot of stickies on here as I read. When I'm reading a physical book, I usually take notes as I go along. I don't like marking up books. I know that a lot of people do, but I don't. Instead, I use these kind of really tiny sticky notes, and I annotate the pages where I find important ideas. And the first note that I have here on chapter 8 is about what I think the chapter is about, which is the role of social engagement in learning. That's how I would characterize the gist of this chapter. And as I go through the notes I took when I was reading the book, or the chapter of the book, I just capture them like that here in Obsidian. And most of the notes in this Obsidian document, you might notice, are like that. They're just my notes taken there. They're not verbatim quotes. Rather, I'm summarizing what I'm reading about. But in some cases, I do want to transcribe verbatim what I see here, and I'm going to show you an example of that now. So there's a passage on page 189 that stood out to me. I think it's an important passage, so I'm going to just type it out, and hopefully you'll bear with me. So it says, our brains evolved to think with people. With is emphasized in the text. To teach them, to argue with them, to exchange stories. I think you can see how this passage kind of captures what this chapter is about. Human thought is exquisitely sensitive. Context. And one of the most powerful contexts of all is the presence of other people. Wow, right? You can see why I'm liking this book so much. As a consequence, when we think socially, we think differently, and often better. That's a pretty amazing claim. Than when we think non-socially. I think that this is an important idea. This chapter, by the way, has given me ideas in how I can improve my teaching, because it makes this point that people learn better when they're explaining things to each other and arguing with each other in a group setting. In any case, I think that this passage captures one of the most important ideas in this chapter. So I wanted to capture it verbatim. Now, I could keep this note as is in the context of this document, in which case I would wrap it in quotes. Obsidian does the job of like automatically, I have a plugin that automatically makes these into smart quotes, which is not acting very smartly right now. But anyways, I would wrap it into quotes, and that would give me that would be like a note to self to say, here you're quoting the book verbatim, right? And if this was the author citing someone else, I would add a citation as such, right? And that gives me a sense for who said this. And also, I would note what page in the book I found this. Now, Uh, I could do this. If I did not plan to use this citation anywhere else, I could keep it like that. But this is an example of a citation that I will likely want to use elsewhere because it's an important idea, and like I said, I find it relevant to my work. So I want to capture it in a second Obsidian note that I can refer to separately, but also keep it within the context of the notes I'm taking on the extended mind. So what I do when I'm going to do this is, well, the first thing is I want to make sure that I keep the attribution, right? So Annie Murphy Paul is the name of the author. And I want to have this entire thing in a separate note. I don't want to keep necessarily the page number because that's specific to this book. And Obsidian will keep the links between these two notes anyway, so I can easily come back to the context in which I found the citation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this whole thing, and then I right mouse click, and there's a command called extract current selection. And what this is going to do is when I press this, it's going to create a separate note in Obsidian that has as its content the body of the selected text. So the citation is going to become a note on its own. And when I press it, I get a dialogue that allows me to create a new note. And I will do that now. I will start typing a name. I usually, when I'm going to extract a note like this, I usually started with the word quote and the dash, and that allows me to organize all of my citations, right? So it'll make it clear to me when I'm reviewing this later that what I'm looking at is a quote. So I'm going to start with, I usually start with the first few words of the quote. And the first few words here are our brains evolved to think with people. And that's a pretty long title, but I find that being mindful about the way that I call, or how I call this, what I call this, will help me afterwards when I'm looking at all of my quotes, all of my citations. I can then get a better sense for which one this is, right? Because I have a lot of these things in my vault. So I've typed it out, and there are no results found, which means there's no other note in my vault that has the same title. So if I press enter, it will create a new note with this content and with this title. So let's do that. And you notice that now I'm still in the context of the notes I'm taking in the book, or of the book, rather. And it's inserted a link to the new note that if I go to editing mode, or sorry, to preview mode here, you'll notice that this is a hyperlink. And I can, if I hover over it, it'll show me the content. If I click on it, it'll take me to that note, right? So it worked. I can go back. And this is good, right? Because now I have a new note in the system that has the content of this citation that I want to include. But that's not really what I want here. What I actually want is to include the citation itself in the context of my book note here. So I'm going to go back to editing mode. And the way that you do this in Obsidian is you can add an exclamation point before the link. So if you add an exclamation point, what that tells Obsidian is that you're not to render a link to this note, but to render it in line, to render it in the context of the current note that I'm editing. So let's do that. I've added the exclamation point. Let's now preview to see what it looks like. Boom, right? So now it's included the thing here, the citation, and yeah, I can read it in the context of my book notes. You'll notice that I still have the reference to the page number, and the reference to the page number doesn't live in the citation note. It lives in my book notes note, right? Which is what I want, because I don't necessarily want that page number to live outside of that context. You'll also notice that I have a little link here in the upper left corner that allows me to navigate to that separate node. Now, one thing that I do want to do here, just because it helps me organize better, I do this to all my my quote notes. I add a tag at the end that just says quote. And when I render that, it becomes a tag, and all of my quotes are tagged as such, which then later allows me to search for them, to look at a list of all the quotes that I've noted. This also integrates with DevonThink, which is really powerful, because then I can create smart filters or smart views in DevonThink that leverage these tags in various ways. Anyway, super powerful. Let's go back to the main note where I'm taking notes about this book. And now that I've added the tag here, you'll note that what this is doing is it's rendering the entire contents of the transcluded note inside the context of this book notes note that I'm working with. And although this is super powerful, it's not really what I want, because I don't really need to see the title of the note, and I don't really need to see this tag in the context of my my book notes. So Obsidian has a feature that is really powerful that allows you to fix that problem. And what this is you have the ability to not just transclude entire notes within other notes. You can transclude paragraphs of other notes within your notes, which is really powerful, right? So, and the way that works is, if you go to the end of the reference in your link here, and you type an up caret, you'll see a little contextual menu that lists all of the paragraphs in that second note. And in this case, it's highlighted two. One is the citation, and the other is the tag. Obviously, the one that we want is the citation. So I'm going to click on that, and you'll notice that it's introduced a little reference number after the title of the note that I'm referencing. And now, if I render my my document in preview mode, you'll see that it's working as intended. Now it is not showing the title, it's not showing the tag, it's just showing the citation. And this is, again, really powerful way to take notes, because now I have two documents. I have my book notes where everything is kept in context, and I also have an individual note for this particular citation, which then I can reference from other notes as needed. So again, super powerful, very exciting. I I'm really enjoying working with Obsidian, and it's really making my note taking much more useful, much more powerful, and much more flexible. So I hope that this video was useful to you. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments below. Thank you.